that CPR also contains something which kind of corresponds or replaces what was discussed about homologation a little earlier. Mainly that these products, construction products like road restraint systems which are placed on the market, they are expected to be certified by independent third parties, meaning notified bodies. And this links to the systems which we have adopted. These road restraint systems have been considered so important for the safety of roads that they have to be, should we say, impartially tested by third parties. And there, of course, come the costs, as Mr. Heckman presented here a little earlier. Obviously, I'm not going very much deeper with this audience into this issue, but obviously the point of this kind of directives and regulations coming from the Parliament and the Council is that they should be respected, because otherwise there is not much reason for enacting them and then putting them in place. And this is of course our foremost goal now with the CPR, the Construction Products Regulation. We have defined in a roadmap the actions to make sure that the thrust towards uniform implementation of this regulation will continue. It has already started and it will continue all the way to this 1st of July 2013 and beyond. This roadmap has been delivered, for example, to the European Parliament as we have made the commitment, our Vice President Tajani made the commitment when at the context of the adoption of this regulation, and we delivered it forthwith, all the plans. This has then later on been updated and also as updated delivered notably to the European Parliament. So I mentioned that our role of standard is different from the new legal framework. But how and why? I'll start with this why. The reason for this is that in our sphere, member states are responsible for the safety of construction works, for the safety of buildings, for the safety of bridges, and here, of course, the safety of roads. This is not like the new approach directives where you precise the essential requirements on the products at European level. In our case, the requirements on products are precised by member states through defining the needs for safety. And therefore, they could be different levels in different member states. But that is not really a problem. For example, here in the case of motorcycle barriers, when this will come within the standards, then we will have a situation where member states can of course choose whether they want to purchase road restraint barriers with motorcycle barriers or without them, or at what level the safety concerns should be attached. And this is the importance of course, this kind of meetings, this kind of events, to raise the awareness of all deciding parties about these necessities and about these safety concerns. But as I mentioned, member states are in charge of defining these requirements. And therefore, the harmonized standards are not there for harmonizing the products, because there is not a uniform set of these requirements for them, which would be then operationalized in them. Instead, what we harmonized in these standards, which we already have more than 400 of in place, this 1317-5 is only one. So we have more than 400 product families within the construction sector already harmonized in this way. What we have there for these product families are harmonized assessment methods and criteria. So harmonized methods how to assess the performance of these products. And this is what is now going to be put in place also for the motorcycle side when these will be included in the harmonized sphere. This also means that in order to assess this performance in any rational and sensible way, technically, you need to define the characteristics for which the performance is measured. So that means that we are convinced, we hope, we insist on that the dilemma brought about by some of the speakers mentioning the different kinds of demands from different bases, from different member states will go away, because these demands also have to be then set according to the same characteristics and according to the same assessment methods. Manufacturers have to use them, these assessment methods, or actually notified bodies for the manufacturers will use the assessment methods when assessing the performance, and afterwards member states in two roles will use the same methods, once as regulators when setting the requirements, and the other time as public procurers, because it's obvious that the users of these road restraint systems very predominantly consist of the road administrations of member states. As I mentioned, these are performance-based standards, and 1317-5 does no exception here. Mr. Wortmann pointed out to us with all these contacts we've had that he's been one of the pioneers in fighting for exactly this kind of performance-based standards, and this is a thing to be noted here. And so they should be empowering these standards for all parties. This is not a matter of von oben herab regulation, that we set rules, we set demands, we set restrictions. It's a matter of allowing the innovation to come through, the manufacturers to develop the kind of road safety barriers which would best serve the needs, which would have the highest performance, and then there in this manner also to reach higher competitiveness, both individually and then for the whole sector of the industry. And this means, as I mentioned, not the same kind of products, but instead we have now given also the member states, empowered also the member states to define the performance in one single way, allowing for full attention to safety concerns. And this will then happen, as I already mentioned, at least yesterday, perhaps today as well, from 2013 onwards for motorcycle barriers. The whole systems are to be CE marked, whole road restraint systems. And this means still that the performance of these systems is generally to be assessed very often linked to components. So one part of this assessment of performance will then consist, as defined in 1317-8 and linked to 1317-5, by the performance of the motorcycle barrier part of these systems. And quite as remarked over here, the most important thing also to us has now been to put in place a system for this. If there are slight adjustments, slight improvements to be carried out, it is very important to be informed of them too, but if it is not possible in this sequence, then at the following stage. So this would be probably the logical system. And quite as Mr. Patlovnik already mentioned, it is important to understand that these existing systems would then have to be able to integrate the motorcycle barriers parts, because, as I said, the assessment concerns the whole system when this comes. And this has also been taken into account in the preparatory stages. Then comes a very fair question which has been asked by several of us. Why not sooner? Why has this taken so long? You must remember that CEN, our European standardization body, is working autonomously, meaning we are not in a situation, even us in the Commission, even if we have the knowledge to do so, to order them to do something. So, therefore, we have been following this standardization work, but with our restraints, our influence has been limited until beginning 2011 onwards, when the standard 1317-5 became harmonized. and the coexistence period stopped, so it really had to be applied. Because then we started receiving information, to put it nicely, from stakeholders. One of them sitting amongst us, for example, and you know whom I'm pointing at, and telling us how peculiarly some member states seem to be applying this thing. Information coming to us telling us how peculiarly some notified bodies are applying this system. Information about all sorts of technical issues which are involved in this standard. And all this led us then to adopt an overall approach and organize a meeting last December where we met with both the SEN parties, the technical committee representatives and the member state representatives and representatives of the industry in order to discuss how to go forwards. And the conclusions were very clear. Firstly, we instructed, kindly asked SEN to proceed with this revision they have now carried out at the fastest possible speed. Secondly, we proceeded with contacting the member states, asking them how they really now are applying this structure, and got so far answers from almost all of them. We are still analyzing these answers, but probably additional questions are in order. And thirdly, giving again a clear instruction for SEN for this larger revision of 2013 to make certain, should we say, qualitative and significant steps forwards, including the inclusion of motorcycle barriers into this harmonized sphere. And we have a full confidence that SEN will be able to carry out all these ones. But obviously this means that we have to stay vigilant, and then we are very happy with the contacts with the Motorcycle Association, because you will certainly keep us informed if there are any glitches involved. So the way forward, apart from these developments and improvements which are to come, I must emphasize once more that the future improvements of road safety, especially for motorcyclists, is in the hands of member states authorities now. They will pretty soon have the tools, the opportunities, they will be empowered to use these new systems. Our example here is one good example, but I'm certain there are dozens of more which are developed and have been developed and will be developed to serve these same needs. So member states are really encouraged, also by us, to take good note of these developments and these innovations. And manufacturers, as informed also here and as we have heard from several sources, are ready to implement these systems. What we'd like, of course, from the Commission side is to make it easier for smaller manufacturers to enter into the competition. We are well aware of the costs involved. And in the CPR, certain systems have been introduced in order to alleviate the burdens of especially the smallest of enterprises. But it is always a possibility when given good ideas to do more. And there will be, of course, a reporting sequence on the CPR, so please note these developments for us. And as the Honourable Member Ayala mentioned earlier, there is a continuum. We already are within it. This event is one part of it, and we are moving all the time towards safer roads. Continuous thrust for innovation, which also brings about competitiveness, as I have been saying. And this occasion is a prime time example to underline the importance of all this. For the safety of all of us, we all will be traveling on these roads, either as motorcyclists or in other capacities. Thank you very much.